So.
All right, so why don't we start off with some bio stuff? Are you originally from this area? What do you do for a living? And what's your background in government?
Okay, so I'm originally from Afton, so not too far from here, just over the border in Shenango County. My family moved away while I was in high school, down to Orange County. That's where my parents live now. But I came back here for college. I went to Binghamton University, and I lived with my grandparents in Colesville while I attended Binghamton University. So I, been in Broome County as long as I've been an adult, right? And for most of my, in the area for most of my childhood. I decided to sort of get involved in politics in the area, partly as an outgrowth of my involvement in college, right? I did finances for the Student Association, so I realized I kind of like working with budgets. I don't mind sitting in committee meetings for hours. I think it's kind of fun and interesting. I ended up running OCCT, which is the blue buses that service Binghamton University right after college. I did that for a little while, and that's how I ended up going to a lot of sort of local meetings with officials and showing up at legislature meetings to see what's going on with BC Transit, who we always had to coordinate with. And I just sort of got it into my head that maybe I wanted to be involved locally. So I saw the opportunity to run for legislature back in 2014, and I took that. It went well. I worked very hard. I know a lot of people kept wondering why was I running against, a long-term incumbent who'd been on city council and who had been the head of his party. But I firmly believe that there always needs to be sort of active and vigorous opposition in all races. And it paid off. I hit every door, and I took advantage of opportunities that arose, and I managed to talk to the 3,000 or 4,000 voters in the 13th district on the legislature, and it worked out. And I ended up getting to serve and represent the 13th district, which is the west side and first ward of Binghamton, on the Broome County Legislature. While I was there, I was on the Public Works and Transportation Committee, as well as the Economic Development Committee. So I got to work really closely with a lot of those departments. I got to do a lot with sort of county contracting and reviews for term contracts, and really learning how that process works out, going through the budgeting process. At the time, it was a $365 million year budget. It's expanded a little bit since then, but it was interesting at that stage in life to be working with essentially $1 million a day, right? And I just took the opportunity in my first year to learn as much as I possibly could, and then I started working on initiatives while I was on the legislature, things like working with the city as best I could to help with their demolition programs for blighted properties. That was a big issue facing my district. I focused a lot, obviously, on transportation, since I had a background in that, and it's an important part of serving the urban core. After I was no longer on the legislature, I went to work for the Broome County Board of Elections, and that's when I really got to meet with a lot of people throughout the entire county, town supervisors and trustees and mayors of communities outside of the city of Binghamton. And that's when I really learned that we're all facing kind of the same set of problems, right? It's population growth, it's jobs, and that's one issue, really, when you think about it. And we have to be moving forward together as an entire county to fix this, right? Because if we look at communities around us, they're doing that, right? They are addressing these issues. The economy is much better now than it was when I finished college, right? It's not 2008 anymore, but we're not necessarily seeing those effects throughout the entirety of Broome County. Obviously, things are going well in places like Binghamton, where we have Rich David doing fantastic work. I was just at the State of the City address yesterday, and having someone with strategic vision and the willingness to make every department and part of the city work towards that goal of making sure services are working and then seeing to the implementation of a policy is fantastic. And in the end, a lot of people say, what's your, is there one core driving issue that you have? In the end, I just want to see the best management practices put into place as possible in Broome County, right? And I I have a differing opinion with the current administration on how that ought to be done, and I want to get in there and work with everybody, because we have 777 appointments that are put in place by the county executive, right? You have a real opportunity to put in place a strategic vision and actually try and solve regional problems. And I'm not seeing that, right? I'm not seeing that from the current administration. There is a lot of work towards promoting things that are going on, but that's not actual problem solving, right? We have questions about what are we doing about the airport? What are we doing about infrastructure projects? You know, there's no square answer, and I want to be able to provide that. And I'm lucky that the campaign season now, with changes in election calendars, starts in February. So we've got 9 months to get that message across to everybody. So, oh, and you had asked what I do currently for work. So I had left the Board of Elections. I work for a small business selling wine and spirits over in Vestal. So, yeah.
What are some more specific steps that you would take if you were elected to sort of put forward this strategic vision?
Well, one would be taking a clear look at what are we doing for attracting jobs and population, right? And I know that it sounds like a broken record, jobs and population, but I mean, everyone has talked about it, right? It's what pretty much anyone who's run on the county level has discussed for years. And it means, you know, making a coordinated effort where we bring about, where we're making sure that we have the right environment, right? And this is the sort of the traditional Republican argument, right, for economic policy, making sure that there is the right environment for that, and that means looking at our tax policy, making sure that that is attractive to businesses, looking at our, you know, the homes that we and communities that we have to offer, and that has to do with public safety, and that has to do with making sure that we are building communities that are worth living in. And that's where the county comes into play, right? We have things like the arena, we have things like the forum, and they're not being used to their fullest potential, right? They're kind of afterthoughts. And they're that quality of life stuff. Things like the arena, the forum are fantastic county parks, right? These need to be, you know, the jewels in the crown of Broome County. I mean, I love it here. There are so many opportunities for a young person, right? And I think that we should have a better way to show this to families and businesses that it is worth coming here, right? We always talk about what are we doing about the airport, right? It's not, as far as passenger service goes, right? Commercial passenger service, we're in a completely different landscape than we were 10, 20 years ago, right? Airlines operate differently. We're doing well with, you know, business flights, and how do we expand upon that, right? When I was on the legislature, we put in improvements all the way along Airport Road, gas and water, and you know, making the road more accessible to business trucking. Let's try and attract some of this internet commerce, right? That's going on. There's an opportunity to do that there that I'm not seeing taken advantage of right now. Rather than lamenting the fact that it doesn't work as a passenger airport, let's seize that and build something new with it. And that's just, you know, that's one example. Yeah, so.
Let me ask you this. What do you think you learned from your 2 years on the legislature that make you better prepared now to be the county executive?
Government requires a lot of long-term thinking, and that's something that's directly at odds with being on the legislature, where it's a 2-year term, right? Because most plans are enacted in 3, 4, 5. You know, on the federal level, plans are planned out for 14 years, right? I remember talking with Richard Hanna back when he was our congressman, and he would talk about how they have to strategize 14 years in advance. And it's difficult to put into place plans at that length when you're constantly worried about re-election, And that's one of the biggest lessons. The next biggest thing would almost certainly be there are a lot of tools at your disposal when you're in government, right? And it takes having had experience in government to learn what all of those are, right? You have so much talent in these government departments, and sometimes you feel like people aren't talking to them. I remember when I was a legislator, I would go down and talk with department heads and deputy department heads, and they would just be so excited that someone was there to listen to what they had to say. There's so much expertise locked up in there and so many plans that are on the shelf and ready to roll that I just can't wait to get my hands in there and see what people have already thought up and weigh those decisions and put things into action, right? That's it's it can't be about you, the politician. It has to be about everybody who's already working together and getting them excited and giving them the resources that they need to do their jobs, right? So it's about a culture of management more than anything, right? And I think that we can achieve something new and great and move forward in that. So,
What skills do you think you possess personally that would make you good at being the county executive?
I think that I take a slightly different approach than most people who get into politics, right? I think maybe they're more personality traits than specific skills. I have skills like budgeting and sales, and I've worked in retail, and that's great in being able to talk to people. I think that the ability to be critical but diplomatic at the same time is something that we're missing right now, and is a trait that I've tried to cultivate throughout my life. Because there's nothing wrong with saying, I disagree, or this is wrong, or we need to do this better. But in the end, you've got to be able to bring together as many people as possible, right? We've got to work with all of our different community leaders, and not all of them are going to agree with me on everything, but we should at least all be on the same page about stopping decline in our community when it shouldn't be declining. So,
Why do you want to be county executive?
so that I can save the home that I live in, right? This is where I live. I've decided to make Broome County my life, right? And I know it's unusual for someone who's in their late 20s to try and jump in at this level, but I have the time to do this. I have the passion for this. I can take this risk without, upsetting a family or leaving people at home, right? Now is the time for me to take an opportunity like this rather than 10, 15 years from now. And I don't think that my thoughts on how Broome County ought to be run is going to change, over time. Obviously you learn and you gain experience, but I want to be the county executive because you have access to all of those departments and all of the talent that you can put into action, right? It's the one position that sees to the administration of federal, state, and local policy, right? It's all of those programs are run through the county. The number of times that I saw, federal or state money coming to the county through grant programs that are then administered by county employees, right? I know it's not super exciting, but that's amazing to see where it happens, right? If you want to make a change in your community, it happens at the county level, and the county executive is the one who runs the county. That's why I want to run Broome County. So, yeah.
All right, so why should people vote for you?
Because my plan is to bring about thoughtful, ethical government in Broome County with laser vision on making sure we're moving forward and addressing population, jobs, making our home the best it possibly can be. So, yeah. And I have the right personality and skill set to make that happen.